The bill is $2,600. The backers are the mafia, you know? If you're scared, why don't you call your daddy? I found myself in an overpriced pub with my coworker. When I refused to pay the outrageous bill, the pub staff threatened me like that. Furious, I fought back. Do you want to make this a big deal? And then, 5 minutes later, just as I declared, the pub was in a huge mess, with the staff crying and apologizing. I'm Caitlin Nichols, 35 years old. I work as a regular company employee. At work, I'm close with my coworker Emily. But Emily has had a bit of a problem lately. The problem is the pub that Emily has recently become obsessed with. It's a pub on the surface, but it's a concept pub with male sugar baby apparently. I had a bad feeling about it and told her it's better to stay away, but she said it's not as high stakes. However, my bad feeling was right, and we ended up having a terrible experience there. It's definitely fun. Once you go, you'll be hooked for sure. Emily boasted about the pub and showed me the sickeningly sweet exchanges on her mobile phone. To be honest, I wasn't interested at all. I politely played along, thinking it's more worthwhile to spend money on yourself than on other people. The next day, Emily came to work as usual. Emily is very diligent, so even if she's hungover, she doesn't slack off like I do. She's been working a lot of overtime lately, which seems tough, but when I talked to her during lunch break, she started talking about that pub again. I have to make a lot of money for him. When I think that way, work becomes unbelievably fun. Really? Is he that great of a guy? Yeah, but he told me he wants a $3,000 allowance every month. It's tough if you ask me. Oh, but in return, he gives me special service when I visit the pub. I was shocked by how cheerfully Emily said that. Is she spending even more money on top of sending $3,000 every month? No matter how happy she is to be wanted, isn't that going too far? Thinking that, I advised Emily not to overdo it. But she just laughed it off. $3,000 is on the cheaper side. Some people who go there send $10,000 a month. What? If I could make that much money, I could keep a handsome man all to myself. She had a dreamy look in her eyes, but it's clearly an abnormal relationship. Feeling uneasy, I warned her not to get any strange ideas. When I asked her where that pub is located in the first place, she handed me the pub's business card, probably thinking I was getting interested. Looking at it, I couldn't help but frown. That's because the address was in an area notorious for its poor public safety. I just hoped she wouldn't get caught up in anything shady. I had that thought just a few days ago. Without my knowledge, Emily's shocking private life had taken an unbelievable turn. Hey, I need to talk to you about something. Emily said that to me a few months later. She looked haggard, far from being healthy. Talk? Sure, but what's wrong? You've been acting strange lately. It's hard to say it here, so can we go out for drinks after work? Yeah. I was worried about Emily's bitter smile, and I couldn't focus on work all day. Then in the evening, I finished work on time to go drinking with Emily. While waiting at our usual pub, Emily entered after finishing work. Oh, Emily. Did you lose weight? Are you eating properly? Well, you know. Even the pub staff was concerned about how much weight Emily had lost. If even I, who sees her every day, think that way, it must be a shocking change for people who only see her occasionally. Emily spotted me, ended her conversation with the staff, and hurriedly walked over. Good work. So, what's the matter? My curiosity got the better of me, and I leaned in to get to the point. Then, Emily looked apologetic and hesitant, but after ordering a drink, she quickly got to the point. I know this is a lot to ask, but could you lend me some money? What? Remember I told you about that pub before? Actually, I used up all my savings. When I said I can't send living expenses anymore, they started demanding money from me every day. Hearing that, I was dumbfounded. Even though she said they were good people, they turned out to be suspicious after all. Moreover, it seems they've been following her around lately. She said they threatened to make her suffer if she said she didn't want to be involved with them anymore. So, when I asked what I could do to make them leave me alone, they told me to prepare $100,000 as severance pay. $100,000? There's no way a regular company employee can come up with that. But if I don't prepare it, they might make me suffer. When I said it's impossible, they tried to take me to some shady place. Emily seems to have fallen into a quagmire she can't escape from. I want to help her somehow, but is there anything I can do? I do have a last resort, but if people at the company found out, it would be really bad. But Emily started crying, looking like she's really cornered. Did you go to the police? I filed a damage report, but the police won't take action. Seems like they have dangerous people backing them. I was even more at a loss. For now, to rescue Emily, I need to talk to that man. It would be great if we could find some kind of compromise. I'll intervene and talk to him for you. So call that person and have him come here. Oh, okay. With an anxious look, Emily sent a message telling him to come now. Apparently, that man's name is Henry. What should we do? He won't come. What? Why? He said if we want to talk, we have to go directly to the pub. Meeting outside is prohibited unless it's an arranged date. I thought this was getting bad. But now that we've stepped in, we can't just leave it alone. To help Emily, I contacted a certain place in advance and headed to the pub where Henry was. Welcome. That girl over there said she wants to talk to me? It's not often you introduce me to a new girl. Guess you're useful for something after all. The pub we were taken to looked shady at a glance. We were immediately shown to a table, with Emily and I sandwiched between two men. One of them was Henry, the one Emily mentioned. The other was introduced as Joseph, Henry's colleague. We were asked what we wanted to drink, so we said water. I came here today because I have something to discuss. Please let Emily go. When I cut straight to the point, Henry made an unpleasant face and glared at Emily. Emily seems to be completely looked down on, trembling in fear. Let her go. What's that about? I was just being friendly with Emily. His tone was calm, but he wasn't smiling. Anyway, if you wanted to meet me, let's talk about something fun. The reason I wanted to meet was to settle this. $100,000 for severance pay is obviously absurd, don't you think? Huh? That just means you don't want to let go of her that easily, right? You get it, don't you? Henry said that with a creepy laugh, glancing at Emily out of the corner of his eye. Thinking about how he's deceived so many women like this, I couldn't help but feel infuriated. This is going too far, no matter what. This is a pub, right? Why are you acting like a sugar baby? Yeah, a pub. So calling me a sugar baby is a bit. And in the first place, it's the girls who come here that started saying that. Just think of it as part of the service. Are you properly following procedures in running this place? I've heard rumors that you have shady people backing you too. Of course. What? Are you prying? Are you a lawyer or something? Henry laughed happily. He probably thinks that if I'm a lawyer, I must have money. No, I'm not. Anyway, just stay away from Emily from now on. Hearing those words, Henry's mood soured. What did you say? If you keep saying such cheeky things, you don't know what'll happen to you. Henry glared at me with narrowed eyes, but I glared right back, not backing down. Then, barging in between us was Joseph, Henry's colleague. Who are you? Are you messing with us? You know that's called obstructing our business, right? He intimidated me with a frightening look, and I almost averted my eyes involuntarily, but I endured it. I came here to settle things. Emily's contributed enough already, don't you think? I don't know about that, but if she doesn't like it, she doesn't have to pay, right? What the heck are you even doing here? If she refuses to pay, you're the ones who will harass her, correct? What evidence do you have to say something like that? Being told that, I found myself at a loss for words. I glanced at Emily, but she whispered that she doesn't have any direct evidence either. The person stalking her isn't Henry, but someone else, she says softly. Hearing that, Henry and the others laughed through their noses. That's what you call a false accusation, isn't it? We have nothing to do with it, but you assumed that because of the work we do here? That's a terrible prejudice to have. That's not it. If you were running an honest business, I wouldn't be saying any of this. As if. You know, women are so selfish. It's infuriating, but we're the ones catering to them to keep them happy. We should be allowed to take a little, don't you think? Henry looked at me with a mocking grin. Emily was already on the verge of tears. I can still pay the $50,000, so please forgive me for that. Wait, Emily. What are you saying? Because if I don't. Just calm down. I patted Emily's shoulder to calm her down. Seeing that, Henry and the others looked even more gleeful. That works too. Well then, have it all ready by tomorrow. The full amount by tomorrow. That's impossible. Can we break it up into payments? Didn't you just say you could have it ready? You heard her too, right, Yosef? When Henry asked, Yosef nodded with a sleazy grin. Things have taken a terrible turn. Emily was trembling and unable to speak. On her behalf, I raised my voice and strongly refused, saying it was impossible. But the two men wouldn't listen. You're such a noisy woman. Just go home already. We're done talking, right? The conversation isn't over yet. It is over, isn't it? We settled on $50,000. I think we're making a big concession here. It's absurd to assume we're paying in the first place. I desperately pleaded, but Yosef forcibly shoved a receipt at us. We hadn't even ordered anything besides water here. I kept insisting it made no sense to give us a receipt. However, Henry snatched the receipt from Yosef and threw it at me. Your bill is $2,600. Our backers are the mafia, you know? If you're scared, call your daddy. Then he threatened me to hurry up and pay while laughing mockingly. We only ordered water, right? Why is the bill so high? Isn't it obvious? It's a nuisance fee. If you don't pay, I really will call some people. They can introduce you to a good place to work so you can earn the money there. Hearing those words, I finally lost my temper. And I decided it was time to use the last resort I had prepared in advance. This is going to turn into a big problem, you know. I said that in a threatening tone. Hearing that, Henry and the others burst out laughing. They probably think there's nothing a mere office worker like me can do. Emily also looked at me with wide, anxious eyes. I patted Emily's shoulder reassuringly and told her I have a good plan. You going to call the cops or something? But your harassment is all caught on camera. You're the ones who will get arrested. Henry still had that smug look on his face as he said that. Yosef was also staring at us with a similar expression, but I didn't lose my bold stance. Dad? Can you come over, Ott? As I muttered that with a mobile phone in one hand, the two men laughed even harder. She seriously called her daddy. You okay with this? Your dad's about to have a bad time right in front of you. I glared at the two of them and told them to wait a few minutes. Henry and the others grumbled that they didn't have time for this, but I said it would be quick and got them to wait. 5 minutes later, a male staff member came running up to Henry and the others with a pale face. We have a problem. There are scary-looking people out front. Huh? Manager. Please do something. It seemed Henry was the manager. Hearing that, I couldn't help but smile. Doing whatever you want in this city, you must have a death wish. What are you talking about? Well, you'll find out soon enough. Henry grimaced, looking displeased. As if sensing something ominous, he suddenly grabbed me. At that moment, a shadow fell over Henry's head. Miss, is this the guy? He's definitely an unfamiliar face. What? The man who spoke was over 190 centimeters tall. He had a sturdy build and glared sternly at Henry and the others. That imposing aura made the two men cower for a moment. Seeing that I was being grabbed, the man immediately grabbed Henry's wrist tightly and told him to let go. Henry was slammed to the floor. Henry then made an exaggerated show of being in pain. Ow! What do you think you're doing? I got hurt because you grabbed me. Pay up for damages. Henry yelled at the man with a nasty grin. I was astounded by how low this man would stoop. Hearing the commotion, Emily hurried over to me and pressed close. Is it really okay to do this? Leave it to me. As I said that to reassure Emily, she stared at me uncomprehendingly. Then, even more guests arrived. What's this? Trying to collect money from the mafia? That's some nerve you've got there, punk. What? The mafia? Henry blinked, searching for the source of the voice. The voice belonged to an elderly man, flanked by 5 other men of similar stature. Despite his age, the man stood tall with a ramrod-straight spine and a face like Satan himself. "Dad, I'm sorry for calling you out here like this," I said, and Dad muttered in a low voice, "Don't worry about it." That's right, this man is my dad. He's what you might call the mafia, in charge of this entire town. Dad dotes on me and is always lenient, but he hates dishonesty. There have been times when he scolded me harshly for doing the wrong thing. Many people looked up to Dad. This town originally had very poor public safety, so the police hardly ever got involved. No matter what happened inside, they couldn't recklessly intervene without knowing who was connected. So instead of going to the police when something happened, the townspeople would consult with Dad, who ran the streets. Even though he's mafia, Dad has ties with the local police and could settle most matters amicably. When I saw this restaurant's business card, I immediately knew it was one Dad wasn't aware of. I asked Henry to make sure, and he said he had followed the proper procedures, but I could tell right away that it was a lie. Thanks to Henry lying for me, I had a pretext to call Dad. Not only that, but before coming here, I had contacted Dad. I told him to be ready to move at any time in case something happened. Dad said he would go ahead and take care of it, but I told him I would talk to them first, because if I could make them understand, there would be no need for Dad to come out. But Henry and the others didn't take it seriously. Honestly, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but I felt like this was going nowhere, so I called Dad. Usually only Dad's men would come, but Dad is a worrywart, so he must have come himself. He is in a position to make enemies, so he seems fully prepared in case something happens. Many of Dad's men have already entered the restaurant. Outside, there are probably black cars parked all over the place. I've heard everything from my daughter. You're going to pay the price, right? I'll be your witness, so line up over there. No one's going to be satisfied with trying to resolve this with money, are they? Paying the price means each of you putting up something precious to you. As Dad said this, Henry and the others, who had been so confident until now, turned pale and froze. They hurriedly stood up and suddenly took a humble stance. What do you want? What do you mean, Dad? You're the boss of the Nichols family, right? You know my face? Then this will be quick. I hear you opened a store here, but I haven't heard a thing about it. Not only that, but I hear you're making quite a profit. Just what kind of store is this? As Dad glared at him, Henry explained, still pale, that it was a concept pub. He then apologized, saying that he had intended to go and pay his respects, but the intermediary had taken a long time to connect him, so he hadn't been able to go in the end. Hearing this, Dad snorted and gave Henry a sharp look. Who and where is this intermediary you're talking about? What? You should have come to pay your respects first thing, but the fact that you were put off means they're looking down on you. If we don't give them a proper talking to, it will make us look bad, won't it? Henry broke out in a cold sweat and fell silent. Judging from his reaction, it was clear that the story about the intermediary was a lie. Unable to endure Henry's attitude any longer, the men surrounding Dad all began shouting at once. They were all indignant, saying they couldn't stand being disrespected like this and that they needed to have a proper talk with him. Henry was surrounded and pressured to quickly reveal who this person was. I'm very sorry. There's no such person. So you lied? Yes. I'm very sorry. I never thought this would happen. No, well, I had heard the story properly. When I was given this place, I was told to make sure to pay my respects. But, well, My dad listened to his faltering words and let out a deep sigh. Trying to swindle money from us and then lying on top of that. You've got some nerve looking down on us like that. His voice was low, almost a growl. Henry shuddered at the sound and offered a deep apology. But Dad told him they needed to have a serious talk and had his men move Henry to a seat. Opening a store without permission, running a shady business, and even causing trouble for my daughter. This is an unforgivable incident. How are you going to pay the price? Seated directly in front of Dad, surrounded by strong men, Henry was trembling and hanging his head. Emily also turned pale and became flustered at the sight of him, looking like he might faint at any moment. "Caitlin, you're in the mafia?" "No way. I left home, so I'm not involved. But my family is. When I saw this restaurant's business card, I knew it was one they weren't aware of, so either way, this was bound to happen." When I said that, Emily turned pale. Before I knew it, the female customers in the restaurant had disappeared, and Dad's men were glaring at the staff while waiting for the conclusion of Dad and Henry's conversation. Henry's colleague Yosef was also surrounded to prevent him from escaping. What's going to happen to Henry?" "Who knows? But since he opened a store without permission and made a lot of money through shady business practices, he'll probably have to pay a price commensurate with that." "What does that mean?" "I don't know what will happen either." Emily's voice caught in her throat, but she didn't ask me to help. She must have been fed up after being treated so badly. "By the way, Emily, I'd like you to keep quiet about my family at the company. I really wanted to keep it a secret, but I told you because I wanted to help you. You understand, right?" "Oh, of course. Deep down, I always felt guilty, like this was going too far." "Then promise me that you'll never use money like this again." Hearing those words, Emily silently nodded. Meanwhile, the conversation between Dad and Henry continued. It seemed he was being cornered quite badly. Once Dad had him thoroughly pinned down, I thought, staring intently, and my eyes met Henry's. "Hey! I won't do this again, so please help me. Convince your dad." I laughed through my nose at his pathetic appearance. "Don't you have the mafia backing you? Why don't you call them?" At those words, Henry turned pale. The mafia backing he mentioned must have been my dad. Since he had used Dad's name without even paying his respects, Dad's anger must have been at its peak. "What's this about? You have someone backing you? Then call them out right now. Which organization are they from?" "Wait. I am so sorry. I used your name without permission and did whatever I wanted. Since this town was under the Nichols family's jurisdiction. Casually throwing around the mafia's name is a serious crime, even legally. Do you want to go to prison?" No way. I am sorry," Henry cried, but my dad wouldn't forgive him. Told that they needed to talk at the office, Henry tried to run away in fear, but he couldn't escape. There were many of Dad's men in the restaurant, so there was no way he could get away. As a last resort, Henry clung to me. "Please help me. I'll do anything. I won't go near that woman again. So please." "Why would I help someone who's made a fool of me? I tried to talk to you properly and warn you before it came to this. But it's your fault for not listening." Then Henry, with tears streaming down his face, expressed his regret, saying it wasn't supposed to turn out like this. Afterwards, he was put in a car and taken away somewhere. The staff who were left behind were told not to get involved again, and that if they did this kind of thing again, they wouldn't get off easy. Amidst all this, I took Emily's arm and headed to my family's house. At home, Dad promised Emily that he would make sure Henry was properly dealt with. Hearing this, Emily expressed her gratitude many times, saying she would never forget this favor, and then left. I don't know what happened to Henry after that. And I continue to go to work as usual, occasionally stopping by my family's house. Since Emily is keeping her promise, I've managed to avoid being found out. If anything, Emily has become more attached to me than before. Seeing her like this, I feel like I've gained a cute little sister, and I'm living peacefully while savoring the feeling of being admired like sisters. Nobody's going to buy your paintings. Instead of wasting your time on that, you should get a part-time job. Timothy tore up the exhibition tickets right in front of me. Silently, I stared at the pieces scattered at my feet. Tears began to overflow. Becoming an illustrator was a dream of mine since childhood. I had finally realized that dream and managed to hold an exhibition. But it was denied. Every time I painted, Timothy, as well as my father-in-law Brian and mother-in-law Donna, made faces of disdain. Still, I endured and lived on. I never neglected household chores. After our daughter Cynthia was born, I managed parenting as well. I never dismissed Timothy's hobbies. Yet, this was too much. Quietly, I thought to myself, Timothy, I won't forgive you anymore. From now on, I will live as I please. I won't let anyone complain. Picking up the pieces of the tickets, I glared at Timothy. I, Jessica, am 35 years old. I was married to Timothy at 22. Our daughter, Cynthia, is starting elementary school this year. She seems to be struggling a bit with her studies, but she's getting along with her classmates and seems to be enjoying school life. As a mother, it's a relief. After sending Timothy and Cynthia off and finishing the housework, I sit at my desk. My job is an illustrator. As a freelancer, I mainly take commissions from individual clients. Sometimes I get called by corporations, which makes me especially nervous. While requests have started to come in consistently, my family has never recognized my work. We live in a second-hand house, cohabiting with Brian and Donna. Brian and Donna don't work and are at home all day. They never help with the housework. They mainly complain about my cooking and berate me for only painting. My painting isn't just a hobby. I'm getting paid for it, and I have deadlines to meet. Since you're not a painter, paintings won't make money. No matter how many times I explain, it's the same response. Brian, Donna, and Timothy seem to think I'm lying just because I want to paint. The pensions are much more reliable. They demand an allowance every month. Since they're receiving pensions, they want me to give them money from that. It's proof of hard work in our younger days. If only someone would actually work. Brian and Donna criticize me together. I've suggested moving out to Timothy several times. Each time, Timothy would raise his voice. What a heartless woman! They're my parents, show some respect. But Timothy always sided with Brian and Donna. Even when Donna accidentally broke a vase. Mom's not at fault, he said. It's your fault for placing such a fragile thing here. They insisted, and I was always made out to be the bad guy. Donna's main way of spending her allowance is on toys for Cynthia. Thank you, Grandma. It's okay. I'll buy you anything, just tell me. Okay. I love you, Grandma. Unaware of the truth, Cynthia is fond of Donna. On the other hand, when we go shopping and Cynthia wants sweets, I sometimes take them away from her. At such times, Cynthia would yell at me. You're mean. You're nothing like Grandma. Cynthia, I'm saying no because I'm worried about you. You'll get cavities if you eat too much. But Grandma says it's okay. Stop comparing me to Grandma. I raised my voice unintentionally. Cynthia started crying. Other customers looked over while talking. That night, Timothy came home furious. How dare you make Cynthia cry? But I don't want to hear any excuses. From now on, Cynthia's care will be Mom's and my responsibility, so you don't have to do anything. I was shocked by that order. I wondered if Timothy and Donna, who spoil Cynthia without doing anything, really believe they can take care of her. But Timothy's eyes were serious. Feeling overwhelmed, I nodded. However, Timothy's seriousness lasted only 3 days. Donna seemed not even to listen and did nothing as well. To think of it, I'm the one working. It's not fair for only you to live without doing anything. With that, he once again instructed me to take care of Cynthia. Despite the continuous unpleasantness, my work was going well. Is this really happening? While reading an email, I muttered to myself. A client, with whom I had corresponded a few times, had invited me to an exhibition. Excited, my cheeks flushed. I checked the email several times, savoring the fact that it was true. To hold an exhibition, I needed many paintings. There were repostings of past works, but the main content was still new creations. I started creating with more passion than ever before. I always worked late at night when my family was asleep. Even if my family didn't acknowledge me, there were people who appreciated my paintings. That alone made me feel like I could keep going no matter what. The exhibition was fast approaching next month. After delivering several new pieces, all that was left was to wait for the event. Tickets for the day of the event were sent to me. There were 3 tickets. It was a thoughtful gesture from the organizers for families. I was uncertain. Would Timothy come with me? Maybe the success of the exhibition could make him acknowledge my career as an illustrator. I decided to invite Timothy. Hey, Timothy. What? At that moment, Timothy was watching TV. A baseball game. It was a game featuring the player Timothy supports. Engrossed in the TV, Timothy said, "I'll be going out next month. I've got plans to drink with friends." "Oh. Can't you make some time?" "Why should I? My work has been recognized, and there's an exhibition coming up. I was hoping you could come see it." Timothy silently watched the TV. Impatiently, I repeated, "It's my first exhibition. A regular and important client organized it, and there will be new paintings." "What are you talking about?" Finally, Timothy looked my way. His eyes were twisted in contempt. "Don't drag me into your playtime." "It's not play. The paintings on display might even sell." "Your paintings? Nobody's going to buy them. Instead of wasting time on that, you should get a part-time job," Timothy shouted. He snatched the tickets from my hand. And then, he tore them up right in front of me. The pieces scattered at my feet. I stared at the pieces in a daze. I was speechless. Only tears overflowed. Picking up the pieces of the tickets, I thought to myself, Timothy will never understand my profession. I have never dismissed Timothy's hobbies. But Timothy would not allow me to have hobbies, nor to make them my job. I've reached my limit. I found myself glaring at Timothy. I can't take it anymore. I blurted out. Saying it out loud, I felt my resolve harden. I should leave Timothy. Honestly, divorce had always been on my mind. The divorce papers were kept in a drawer in my room. But every time I thought of handing them to Timothy, I remembered Cynthia. Cynthia needs both her parents. And if I took her and left the house, she would have to transfer schools. That's why I've been enduring it all this time. But that ends today. "Hey, Jessica." Ignoring Timothy's call, I returned to my room. I gathered my things and filled out the divorce papers. "This is it." Nodding to myself, I headed to Cynthia's room. Cynthia seemed to be doing her homework, sitting at her desk. "Mom?" "I'm sorry, Cynthia." Seeing Cynthia's face, I was overwhelmed with guilt. I hugged Cynthia impulsively. Cynthia was surprised. "Cynthia, I've decided to leave this house." "Huh?" Innocence faded from Cynthia's face. Feeling sorry for Cynthia yet continuing, I said, "What do you want to do, Cynthia? Stay here with Dad, or come with me?" I thought she wouldn't come. Cynthia was fond of Donna, and I was always scolding her. With that thought and a wry smile, Cynthia surprised me. "I'll go with you." "Cynthia, I love the paintings you make, Mom." Saying that, Cynthia laughed. With a shy smile, she pointed to the desk. "I'm imitating you. I want to get good at drawing too." No, Cynthia, you're already good. You'll be better than me in no time. I was tearing up. Cynthia had drawn a girl standing in a field of flowers. It was a theme I often enjoyed painting. I left the divorce papers on the living room table and left the house. Holding Cynthia's hand, we headed to my parents' house. Since I had explained the situation just before leaving, my parents welcomed us smoothly. To think Timothy was such a person. It must have been hard, Jessica. Yeah. Without a moment to rest, my mobile phone rang. It was Timothy calling. On the phone, Timothy was furious. Jessica! Where's Cynthia? Cynthia is with me. And it's her choice, so it's not kidnapping. Custody, no matter how much the parents argue, ultimately depends on the child's decision. I had read up on custody laws in preparation for the divorce, so I was informed. And Cynthia chose to stay with me. Is that Dad? Yes. Do you want to talk? Yeah. I handed the mobile phone to Cynthia. Timothy's voice softened immediately. Cynthia! Are you okay? Yeah. Dad, I'm sorry. But I want to be with Mom. What are you saying? You'll be unhappy if you're with Mom. Come back. Dad, that's not true. Cynthia said quietly. I was surprised she had become so articulate. Mom has always tried hard. I saw. But you said terrible things about Mom's paintings and hurt her. Cynthia, I'm worried about Mom. So, I'm staying with her. Saying that, Cynthia ended the call. She looked at me and laughed shyly again. I was stroking Cynthia's head. I thought I had no allies in that house. But Cynthia was watching. In the days that followed at my parents' house, calls and letters from Timothy kept coming. The content varied slightly, but the gist was the same. Give back, Cynthia. It's okay. You won't be handed over to that house. Thanks, Mom. I continued my work as an illustrator. Using a pen name unrelated to my real name, my communication with regular and important clients was unaffected. Unlike Brian and Donna, my parents are working. Cynthia was waiting at home for the school transfer procedures. Inevitably, I spent more time with Cynthia. Cynthia started asking me to teach her how to draw and help with her studies. I responded with a smile. There were household chores and my artwork. Yet, I couldn't neglect Cynthia, who chose to live with me. The day of the exhibition was drawing near. My father couldn't take us due to work, but I decided to go to the exhibition with my mother and Cynthia. Then one day, coming! Cynthia cheerfully ran to the corridor when the doorbell rang. But she stopped at the entrance and came back. In a frightened voice, Cynthia said, Mom, Dad's here. I figured as much. I had thought he would come to visit eventually. I took a deep breath. I had no intention of letting Timothy into the house. I wouldn't even open the front door. I planned to have him leave immediately. What do you want? I asked in as cold a tone as possible. To my surprise, it was Timothy's response that startled me. Jessica, please come back. I was wrong. What do you mean? I asked. His tone of voice was too desperate to be an act. Timothy said in a weak voice, Mom and Dad aren't doing anything. We've been living on fast food, and the laundry's been piling up since the day you left. And? It was as I had imagined. Timothy, who often worked outside, must be suffering. Since no one is preparing new clothes, he has to wear wrinkled clothes again. People at sales meetings pay close attention to one's clothes. With Timothy's current unkempt appearance, it would be difficult to get new businesses. If this continues, our house will turn into a garbage dump. Do something about it. I thought I was the one who did nothing in that house. I sighed. Donna said I was a wife who didn't do household chores. You did too. I was wrong. Mom always claimed she did all the housework, and I believed it. I was deceived. His tone made it seem as if he too were a victim, despite having bad-mouthed me together with Donna. Don't you have any intention of doing the household chores yourself? I've never held a knife, nor do I know how to use the washing machine. Then don't rely on me for that. Essentially, he wanted me to come back and take care of the piled-up household chores. That's a joke. I'm not returning to that house. The day I left the divorce papers behind was the day I abandoned all my love for Timothy. There's no way I could feel any sympathy for him now. I'm not a housekeeper. Doing the household chores is a wife's duty. Timothy's tone became rough. I, beyond being appalled, calmly responded. I'm no longer your wife. I used to wake up early every morning to make your sandwiches. But I never heard a word of thanks from you, and it wasn't rare for you to leave them untouched, which disappointed me. I never failed to hang the laundry and iron them to prevent wrinkles. Do you understand? I was never thanked, yet I managed the household chores 365 days a year. So what? Every other wife lives like that. If there was gratitude, we could have been a normal couple. The feeling that Timothy and I could not understand each other reemerged. Timothy didn't understand and didn't try to. He was only temporarily weak because he was in trouble. His essence hadn't changed at all. I was grateful for you working. But that's over. I will live on my own strength. You should too, with your own effort. Hey, wait, Jessica. Timothy was still saying something, but ignoring him, I went back to the living room. Timothy knocked on the door and rang the doorbell. But eventually, he must have given up and left. The exhibition was moderately successful. I walked around the venue holding Cynthia's hand. Mom, who came with us, pointed out a guest. Isn't that Timothy? Huh. I felt a chill. Facing Timothy directly, unlike through a door, was awkward. Cynthia would be concerned too. Yet, I looked at the guest's face. Though wearing a hat deeply, it was indeed Timothy. Mom, please watch Cynthia. Okay. I left Cynthia with Mom and approached Timothy. Trying not to bother other guests, I asked quietly. What do you want? You were really working as an artist. His tone was still listless. His clothes were wrinkled and gave off an unclean impression. Timothy's eyes flicked towards me briefly. But they're not selling, right? Look over there. I pointed to a corner of the venue. Displayed on the wall was a new piece of art. Marked as sold. That painting caught the eye of a private collector, and it even got priced. Want to know how much? No need. Timothy stepped back as if frightened. Seeing my paintings being commercially viable shocked him. Excuse me, may I have a moment? Yes, how can I help you? The person who approached was a local newspaper reporter. They wanted to feature the exhibition and include an interview with me in an article. For freelancers, marketing is crucial. You need to stand out among peers to make it as a profession. From that perspective, it was a welcome opportunity. Timothy was gaping. You're that successful? Well, at least, my monthly income was higher than yours. I said plainly. Timothy moaned in dismay. I had a rough idea. Timothy had always thought he was supporting the family alone with his income. The reality was different. In fact, Timothy's salary wasn't that high. It was only with my income that we could barely make ends meet. Regarding Brian and Donna, they had been demanding based on their pensions, but those pensions were meager. Honestly, the allowance I gave to Brian and Donna couldn't have come from their pensions. It was supplemented by my income. Jessica, you were an amazing person. What are you saying now? I started to walk away from Timothy. He tried to follow me. Jessica, let's start over. You can draw as much as you like. I'll help with the household chores. So, please come back. I didn't respond. The proposal was too convenient for Timothy alone, and I was dumbfounded by it. Besides, I shifted my gaze. He didn't seem to have the courage to speak to me directly, but I had felt their gaze on me for a while now. Indeed, it was Brian and Donna, now in tattered clothes. Brian and Donna were standing in front of my painting that had been marked as sold. They were looking back and forth between the sold sign and me, as if their eyes were about to pop out of their heads. They didn't even glance at my painting. They were just shocked by the fact that a painting could be turned into money. Timothy, how did you get into the venue after you tore up the ticket? I said I was the husband of the illustrator, and they let me in. Ex-husband. My dismay deepened. By tearing up the ticket, Timothy had cut himself off from any benefits of my art. From now on, he had to live on his income and the proud pensions of Brian and Donna. Excuse me, this work is really wonderful. Thank you. A customer complimented me, and another one of my paintings sold right there. Timothy, Brian, and Donna watched the scene in disbelief. The next day, Timothy's calls became more intense. What's happened to Dad? Yes. What a pickle. The effort to bring me back was unprecedented. After some thought, I reported Timothy as a stalker to the police. Although Timothy must have received a warning, his continued phone calls and stalking behaviors eventually got him in trouble with the police. Me? A stalker? That's ridiculous. I'm her husband. He claimed, but the divorce was already finalized, rendering his protests meaningless. Faced with their son causing a police matter, Brian and Donna also left Timothy's side as if fleeing, likely followed by bad rumors wherever they went. My profession was not recognized by my family. That must have been tough. During the interview, I shared the pain of not being acknowledged for my work by Brian, Donna, and Timothy. The emerging creator is a tragic heroine, overcoming adversity to continue her work. That was the headline. I looked at the article as if it were about someone else. Tragic heroine sounded too sweet. It was tough. But now, it's different. I have Cynthia. I have my parents. And I have the voices of fans who need my work. Timothy. The ticket you denied had this much power. Though it was a local paper, the article improved my recognition as an artist. Work started coming in more than before, and I could support Cynthia on my single income. Staying with my parents indefinitely felt uncomfortable. I decided to rent an apartment with Cynthia, choosing a place as close as possible to her new school. My parents seemed regretful. You're always welcome to stay here. Yes, Jessica, you've been through a lot at that house. Thank you. But it's my life, I said as if to convince myself. The disgrace of depending on someone was something Timothy, Brian, and Donna had taught me. I would live taking them as a negative example. Cynthia brought friends home. She seemed to be managing somehow at her new school. Despite the inconvenience caused by her parents, Cynthia didn't use it as an excuse and lived positively. Mom draws pictures. Wow, that's cool. Since moving, Cynthia's speech had matured somewhat. She started practicing drawing seriously. Until then, she would whimsically draw girls in her free notebook, but she began showing interest in the equipment I used for work, spending more time watching me work. "I'm going to be like you, Mom." "Really? I'm glad. Then, want to try using this pen? Can I?" Cynthia's cheeks flushed with excitement. It reminded me of myself when I got new notebooks or paints, and I smiled. Cynthia and I, we truly are mother and daughter. At first, Cynthia couldn't draw straight lines. Trying to draw, her lines would warp into squiggly blobs. But after many attempts, Cynthia's lines began to form into pictures. Her work with paints and colored pencils showed signs of improvement. Apparently, she's among the better artists in her class. "Mom, look! My teacher praised this picture." "Really? Let me see." I was thrilled. It's my daughter's growth. There's no way I wouldn't be happy. I had only taught Cynthia the very basics. How to break down the human body into parts for easier drawing and the relationship between light sources and shadows. Other than that, Cynthia must have learned by watching my work and completed paintings. Cynthia might be more talented than me. I genuinely thought so, without exaggeration. Cynthia smiled shyly. I will continue to draw. For Cynthia. For my fans. And most of all, for myself, who never gave up on drawing no matter the circumstances. Standing is common sense for a daughter-in-law. I had been preparing food and welcoming guests since the morning at a family gathering. Being 9 months pregnant, I was taking a short break on the sofa in the back. When my mother-in-law, Susan, found me sitting, her expression changed drastically as she approached me and snapped those words. "Susan, I'm sorry. I'm just having some discomfort in my stomach." Unable to stand due to the pain, I apologized while remaining seated on the sofa. As I struggled to get up, Susan, seeming to give up, turned to leave but then shockingly kicked my stomach. "Susan, how could you?" I immediately curled up to protect my stomach, and fortunately, I didn't feel much pain. "It's your useless body that's the problem." This was a line I was all too familiar with after always being oppressed, but I was left speechless by the shock of being kicked in the stomach. Someone, who had been silently watching this scene, waited until Susan was seated, and then. "My name is Anne. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. I live happily with my husband Tom and our 3-year-old son. I am currently 9 months pregnant with our second child. Before the pregnancy was confirmed, it was decided that Tom would be transferred to work abroad alone. Although Tom insisted on staying in America, I didn't want him to give up his dream of working overseas, a goal since our dating days. After I encouraged him to the end, he promised to go abroad for just 3 years, and then he left. While I felt joy in supporting my husband's dream, there was one concern. The insidious harassment from Susan and Mike, my father-in-law. While Tom was around, they adored us, but in his absence, they subjected me to daily verbal abuse. Since Susan and Mike were kind in front of Tom, I always tried to bring him along. But for the next 3 years, I'll have to endure their malicious harassment alone, which is disheartening. However, I couldn't discuss it with Tom, knowing it would only add to his worries and considering Susan's feelings towards her son. Initially, I tried to please them by complying with everything, but no matter what, I only faced their resentment. All I want is to get along with Mike and Susan. Desiring a peaceful relationship with Susan and Mike, one day, I finally broke down and decided to be submissive. Then I heard shocking words from them. "You stole our precious son from us." That's what Susan declared. "Ever since you married our son, he hardly pays any attention to us." I finally understood the root of their relentless harassment. Susan and Mike were so overly fond of their son that they were jealous of me, his wife. "If that's the case, I can always come with him." Startled by Susan's unexpected confession, I tried to find a solution and offered various suggestions. The best thing would be for you to leave our son alone. Right. Then he might return his love to us. I was stunned by Susan's wish. The thought of them wanting a divorce because they felt their son's affection for them had diminished gave me chills. And this distorted expression of their love even scared me. Don't you like the idea of your son building a new family? I asked tentatively. New family? That's ridiculous. Our family is enough. No matter how old our son gets. Realizing the extraordinary love they had for their only son, my husband, I was speechless. I love my husband. I want to get along with you and Susan, but I have no intention of leaving him. Normally quiet, this was one point I could not concede. Seeing my resolve, Susan scoffed and retorted. Are you so confident that no matter how we treat you, you won't leave? From that day on, their harassment only intensified instead of diminishing. At one point, knowing I was allergic to shrimp, they sneakily added it to the fried food. I was about to eat it when my husband, who always harped on about my allergy, noticed and warned me. Shrimp? I'm sorry. Actually, this was a gift. I forgot you can't have shrimp. Susan apologized to me repeatedly, making excuses. My husband seemed satisfied and asked her to be more careful in the future. But even as they spoke, Susan was stepping on my foot under the table. Amidst such harassment, we were leading a peaceful life when my husband's transfer overseas was confirmed. Susan and the others turned pale with shock as I celebrated. Overseas. That's going to be hard on the child and Anne, right? My father-in-law, Mike, really just not wanting to be separated from them, used me as an excuse. My husband said it was a decision we made together, and I knew the anger would soon be directed at me. And, did you even consider my grandchild's feelings? Unsatisfied with my decision, Susan interrogated me like it was an inquisition. Fed up, my husband finally spoke out. Both of you, enough. Working abroad has always been my dream. And is just supporting me in that. He immediately defended me. We support you too. But now just isn't the right time, is it? Mike seemed a bit sorry, yet unable to agree. That's right. The grandchild is only 3 years old. It's too much for Anne. Susan, for once, seemed to be on my side, using my name in her argument. I'm fine. Tom and I have discussed it and decided to go for it. I spoke up, my voice trembling slightly, trying to act bravely so my husband wouldn't worry. Realizing our determination, Susan and Mike reluctantly accepted it, though with a sense of defeat. That night, feeling sorry towards Susan and Mike, my husband suggested we all have dinner together. I had been avoiding eating with them since the shrimp allergy incident, but I decided to endure it for my husband's sake. Then let us, the ladies, get busy preparing in the kitchen. You relax. Susan, excited to cook for her son after a long time, went into the kitchen. Hesitant to be alone with her, I steeled myself and followed her to the kitchen. Aren't you afraid our son might leave you when he returns from abroad? Susan's words, still hoping for our breakup, drained the blood from my face. Realizing it was pointless to engage, I silently started preparing. While we were working on different ingredients, Susan called out to me. And that pot over there is cool. Could you take it to the table? Busy with preparations, I followed Susan's instructions and grabbed the pot handle with my bare hands, only to let go immediately from the scorching heat. A pot of steaming hot beef stew fell right at my feet. I burned my hands and feet. Hearing my scream, my husband and Susan rushed over. And, did you touch it with your bare hands? I told you to be careful of burns. What should we do now? Susan pretended to panic, but did nothing. My husband, seeing this, quickly instructed to bring a towel and ice. He also told Mike to call an ambulance. Seeing my red, swollen hands and feet, I could only cry in pain and frustration, clinging to my husband. Thanks to his quick thinking, I received proper treatment at the hospital and was told it would take 2 weeks to heal. Slowly, my spirit was breaking from Susan's escalating insidious bullying. As time passed and my husband's departure overseas approached, I made sure to avoid Susan and the others completely. Despite their vengeful attempts to visit our home or call multiple times a day, I never responded. For their excuses to see their grandchild, I sent pictures with messages. To my husband, I told him the reason for not seeing Susan was because of severe pregnancy symptoms, which he understood. Half a year passed, and the annual family gathering, highly valued by my husband's family, drew near. Knowing its importance, and though my husband said I didn't have to attend, I decided to go. I informed Susan of my attendance in advance through a message. Her reply, seemingly eager to finally vent her frustrations on me, brought back the flashbacks of my burn injury accident and filled me with more fear. Then, the day arrived when everyone was to gather. I briefly greeted Susan and Mike, then spent most of my time with relatives of my age, keeping my distance. Standing is common sense for a daughter-in-law. I had been preparing meals and welcoming guests since the morning at the family gathering. Being 9 months pregnant, I took a rest on a sofa in the back. When Susan saw me sitting, she changed her expression and came over to me, throwing those words at me. "Susan, I'm sorry. I'm just having some discomfort in my stomach." Unable to stand due to the pain, I apologized but couldn't get up from the sofa. Seeing that I couldn't stand, Susan, seeming to give up, turned to leave, but then shockingly, she turned back and kicked my stomach. "Susan, how could you?" I immediately curled up to protect my stomach, and luckily, the pain was minimal. "It's your useless body that's at fault." I was used to being oppressed by her, but I was left speechless and shocked by being kicked. Someone, who had been silently watching this scene, waited until Susan was seated, and then, "Mom, what did you just do to an on the sofa?" Someone shouted loudly, making everyone, including me, turn towards the voice. There stood my husband, who was supposed to be overseas for work. "Tom." Susan uttered his name in a trembling voice. Painfully, I stood up from the sofa and slowly moved towards my husband. "What did you do to and just now?" he asked Susan, with an expression I had never seen before. "Tom, why are you here?" Until the previous day, my husband had apologized over the phone, saying he couldn't get a long leave and wouldn't be able to attend. I couldn't ask him to accompany me, knowing he had just been transferred overseas. Anne. I came back to surprise everyone. Tom's face softened as he looked at me, his expression changing completely from before. He rushed over to me, hugged me around my shoulders, and supported me. "But when I came back, I happened to see Mom and you having that interaction from the entrance." He had been frozen for a while, not understanding the situation as he had never seen Susan like that before. "I was about to ask and what happened when Mom kicked her." Hearing this, I realized he had witnessed Susan kicking my stomach. Looking up at my husband, I could see the anger in his eyes. "Tom, this is..." Relatives started gathering in the room, sensing the unusual tension, making the situation even more strained. "Tom, everyone is here, let's talk in the other room." Susan tried to calm my husband with a quiet voice, attempting to defuse the situation. "And you don't need to say anything. I want to hear it directly from Mom." Saying this, my husband turned his face towards Susan again. "No, let's hear it here, in front of everyone." The relatives, stunned by my husband's raised voice, watched the unfolding situation in silence. The commotion got Mike and Mike's brother's attention, who had organized the family gathering. "What's all this commotion about?" Seeing the unusual situation, Mike hurried to Susan's side. Upon realizing his beloved son was there in front of him, Mike looked even more shocked. "Dad, it's been a while. I didn't want our reunion to be like this, but I just saw something unbelievable." With Mike's presence, my husband regained some composure and continued in a calm voice. "What happened?" Mike looked slightly uneasy. He already knew Susan had done something to me. Having always turned a blind eye to Susan's bullying, he was part of it too. "It was just, and I were talking." Susan stubbornly refused to admit she had kicked me, trying to get out of this situation. However, my husband quietly glared at her, wanting her to confess. Sensing the conversation wasn't progressing, I finally spoke up. "You kicked me in the stomach, didn't you?" I finally revealed in front of everyone that Susan had kicked my stomach. Hearing this, the relatives began murmuring. "And what an accusation! I would never do such a thing," Susan shouted, flustered. "Never, what, Mom? I saw it with my own eyes." My husband expressed his frustration and anger at Susan's denial and her true nature. As he seemed about to confront Susan, I urged him desperately to stay calm. "Tom, are you sure it wasn't a misunderstanding? Susan doing such a thing." Mike continued to defend Susan until the end. Hearing this, my husband's suspicion only deepened. "Dad, even now, you're siding with Mom?" My husband was speechless at Mike's attitude, seemingly more afraid of Susan facing critical judgment than the fact she had kicked me. "Tom." I could only hold his hand tightly. The ease with which his parents dismissed their daughter-in-law raised my husband's suspicions, bringing up a question in his mind. "Anne, this isn't the first time, is it?" My husband's intuition seemed to pick up on something from Susan's behavior. Trying not to worry him, I felt both frustrated and relieved that my strongest ally had finally appeared, bringing tears to my eyes. Realizing this wasn't the first incident, my husband asked, "Mom, what terrible things have you done to Anne?" His anger not subsiding but intensifying. The relatives intervened to stop Tom as he approached Susan and Mike. "Tell everyone here what pain you've caused, Anne." As Susan heard this, her face turned pale, and she collapsed to the ground. "Tom, it's too harsh to treat Susan like this in her condition." Mike began to show anger towards Tom. "Harsh? Then what about that burn?" Susan and I were shocked, as if our thoughts had paused for a moment. And the one who raised his voice upon hearing this was, surprisingly, Mike's brother. "And was burned?" Mike's brother, who had been quietly observing what he thought was a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue, spoke up for the first time, surprised by the unexpected development. "It seemed strange to me that day, and got a severe burn holding a pot of just done beef stew with her bare hands." My husband had been troubled by the fact that I had done something I would never normally do, and would always check if it's safe before handling a pot with her bare hands if it were her own decision. I always had a habit of double-checking everything, whether it was cooking or leaving the house, which my husband knew well. So, it seemed odd to him that I would grab the pot without thinking. "The beef stew was made by Mom. Did she say something at that time?" As he pressed for answers, Susan and Mike fell silent. Some relatives defended Susan, while others expressed disbelief. I decided to reveal everything. "That time, Susan said it was cool, right?" I repeated Susan's words with courage. I explained how I was busy with my own cooking preparations that day and took Susan's words at face value without checking the pot. "I regret not verifying and ended up getting burned." I admitted my mistake. Hearing this, Susan's expression changed, and she glared at me, shouting, "You are just trying to slander us. What kind of daughter-in-law are you?" Susan, who had been subdued, became enraged when faced with me. "I'm not stupid. I have saved our interactions as evidence." I had secretly been collecting evidence of Susan and Mike's insidious harassment, in case I couldn't endure it any longer. My husband showed a surprised expression, then I said, "Tom, I'm sorry I kept quiet. I didn't want to worry you, and I was afraid of ruining your relationship with Susan and Mike." The root of his parents' harassment stemmed from their affection for their beloved son. It was a twisted love, but I wanted to avoid worsening the relationship between Tom, who had been raised with much love from his parents. Susan and Mike, not expecting that I had been considerate of them, turned pale upon hearing this. "Mom, Dad, did you hear? Even after all this, and was still thinking of us." Tom apologized to me, ashamed that he hadn't realized the situation. "And I'm so sorry my parents made you suffer this much." Tom apologized with tears, and Susan, as if regretting how things turned out, exclaimed, "No, it's wrong. It's her fault. She stole our precious son." It was the moment Susan's true nature was revealed. The relatives around us looked on with cold eyes. Even Mike, considering his brother's reputation, tried to stop Susan's outburst. "Who stole me from you? Are you doing all this too and because of me?" My husband was speechless. Not expecting such a distorted form of love where Susan's harassment was a retaliation for his affection being directed towards his new family. "I'm grateful for how you raised me. But the most important thing to me now is and our family." He expressed his feelings to Susan and Mike. He then shared how much respect and consideration we had always shown towards Susan and her family. "Mom, Dad, I wanted you to see the irreplaceable love of your grandchildren and Anne's admiration for you." Moved by their son's desperate plea, Susan and Mike seemed to finally realize the gravity of the situation, and Mike collapsed on the spot. "Mom and Dad, you've destroyed your own daughter-in-law's love and my trust with your own hands." Hearing this, Susan, realizing for the first time that she had disappointed her precious son, broke down in tears. Seeing Susan crying and distraught, a part of me felt sorry for her outburst. But more so, I felt a sense of relief in her taking responsibility for this mess. Mike's brother, changing the dire atmosphere, intervened. "All right, this isn't a spectacle. The four of you, please move to a quieter room." With those words, the other relatives awkwardly dispersed. Receiving words of sympathy and encouragement, I began to relax a bit. Supported by my husband's arm, we moved to a quieter room as Mike's brother suggested. Once the four of us were inside, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. My husband still had questions for them, eagerly wanting to confront them. However, Susan and Mike looked so exhausted that he hesitated to speak. Then, Mike's brother entered the room. "Now we can have a calm discussion. Is it true that Anne was subjected to insidious bullying?" With a stern expression, Mike's brother asked directly. After a moment of contemplation, Mike finally nodded in resignation. Triggered by Mike's acknowledgement, my husband burst out. "To think my parents would do this while Anne was protecting our child and unborn baby, it's shameful." He voiced all the accusations as if speaking on my behalf. He revealed that the shrimp allergy, the burn, and the kicking were all acts of spite towards me. "I can't understand how Dad and Mom could hurt Anne to such an extent." Disappointed beyond imagination, my husband's disillusionment deepened. Then, Mike's brother brought an end to the discussion. "Tom, that's enough. As your uncle, I'm deeply sorry for such a shameful sibling. I can't forgive what they've done." He apologized to us, then rushed to Mike and struck him on the cheek. "As your brother, I cannot forgive your actions. Don't show your face at family events anymore." He then instructed Susan and Mike to leave immediately. Susan and Mike seemed to want to say something to me, but the fact that they had kicked me remained unchanged. I ignored their expressions and stayed close to my husband's side. Once Susan and Mike were out of sight, I finally felt a sense of closure and, perhaps relieved, I broke down crying. I don't remember much about what happened next, but my husband stayed by my side until the end. After the revelation of Susan's insidious bullying, my husband forbade any contact or visits from them. This helped me avoid seeing Susan, and gradually, my emotional wounds began to heal. The overseas transfer that was supposed to last 3 years was cut short by my husband, who didn't want to be away any longer. He returned to America after just 1 year. Initially, I was a bit apprehensive, but I supported his return, prioritizing the safe birth of our second child. Now, we are eagerly awaiting the birth of our second child as a family of 3. Susan still sends daily messages of apology, wanting to mend our relationship. When I express my fear of seeing them, my husband continues to prioritize my feelings. The relatives also talk about how haggard Susan looks now. And the general consensus is that it's their own fault. In a situation where my husband and relatives are on my side, there's not much Susan and Mike can do. So, once our second child is born, I plan to show them the baby. However, I have no intention of repairing the relationship with Susan and Mike. I'm resolved to spend an ordinary life with our family of 4, combining our strengths. My daughter Sharon's husband Christopher suddenly said with a sly smile, "I want to take this opportunity and discuss this with you. I had a DNA test taken because I thought she didn't look like me. And it turns out she's not my daughter." Christopher said so, pointing at my granddaughter Tiana, who was being held by Sharon. I made an eye contact with my husband Dylan while Christopher was unable to hide his smirk. I figured as much. I was disappointed, but anger quickly overtook me. "So you've been cheating on me behind my back? You bastard! Were you having an affair with one of the fathers who picks up their kids from daycare?" His raised voice caught the attention of those around us. I felt truly sorry. I still wanted to believe in him. "A woman like this is totally untrustworthy. Divorce. I want a divorce." Sharon seemed unable to comprehend Christopher's sudden change. Tiana, sensing something was wrong, started crying, and her cries echoing around us. I couldn't believe he was this kind of person. I felt an anger towards him like I had never felt before for neglecting my daughter. Looking over at Dylan, I saw him with an angry expression, fists clenched. This was our only chance. I exchanged glances with Dylan, then took out a photo we had prepared in advance. This photo was our trump card. With hands trembling with anger, I held up the photo in front of Christopher. "My name is Violet. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I live a commonplace life, but I cherish the certain happiness I feel and value the peaceful family life I have. My family consists of my husband Dylan, who currently works at a travel agency, my daughter Sharon, a nursery teacher, and my granddaughter Tiana. We are a family of 4. Until recently, Christopher, Sharon's husband, who's also an assistant director who works at a TV station, lived with us. When he was still in this house, I never dreamed we would end up living separately. Our current life goes back to when I met Dylan. Meeting Dylan was a story from decades ago. Back then, it was common for our marriages to be arranged by our parents. He was 5 years older, in the prime of his career at a travel agency. He had a manly and serious look about him, which left a good impression on me. Due to his job, he was knowledgeable about geography all over the world. I remember him talking excitedly about the charms of various tourist destinations over dinner. Holding a glass of beer in his hand, he said with enthusiasm, "My favorite place is definitely the pyramids of Egypt. It's what I recommend most to customers. The pyramids, made of limestone, used to shine white, reflecting the sun when they were first built." His carefree smile, like a little boy, stirred something in my heart. Seeing him like that, I wanted to sit next to him and hear more. "I would love for you to take me to your recommended places, Dylan." To that he responded with a smile. "Leave it to me." That's how we hit it off, starting a relationship with marriage in mind. Dylan was busy with work, but he always made time for me. His experience in a travel agency showed in how perfectly he planned our dates and trips. I wanted to walk through life with this man. After a few months of dating, I was convinced that we could make a married life work. "Please marry me. I want to see the pyramids with you on our honeymoon." It was an unplanned proposal. He stared at me wide-eyed for a few seconds, then broke into a broad smile. "Of course. Thank you." "Really? I'm sorry I made you say it." Thus, having confirmed our feelings for each other, we officially pledged our love at our wedding a few months later. True to our promise, we went to Egypt to see the pyramids on our honeymoon. That scenery will never fade in my mind, even after many years. In the midst of what could be called the pinnacle of happiness, our daughter Sharon was born. Life with a child passed surprisingly quickly, and before we knew it, Sharon had grown up and become a respectable nursery teacher. Sharon, who always loved children, seemed fulfilled, even though she was often busy with the kids at the nursery. Through her work, she started talking about wanting to get married and have her own children. She came to me for advice when she was 26. Mom, do you remember Nicola from my university? I talked to her about getting married, and she invited me to a party. I'm not sure if I should go or not. Seeing my daughter seemingly exhausted from thinking about marriage and kids, I decided to give her a push. Well, isn't this a chance? You can trust an invitation from Nicola. Why not just go and see? Sharon looked somewhat anxious, but eventually decided to go. And so the day of the party came. Sharon left the house wearing fancier clothes than usual. Her makeup, different from her normal style, seemed to be done with extra effort. Dylan and I had dinner alone for the first time in a while. As we ate, Dylan seemed restless. What's wrong? Wasn't the dinner good? I asked half-jokingly, and Dylan replied awkwardly. Of course not. I'm just a bit worried about Sharon. I hope she doesn't get deceived by some strange guy. I felt the same way. After all, I was the one who had encouraged Sharon to go. I guess so. But it's Sharon, she'll be fine. She has a good eye for men. After all, she takes after me in that regard. I guess you're right. I think we both were trying to mask our anxiety with laughter. Then, a few hours later, Sharon returned. When I asked how it went, Sharon said with a smile, "There was a great guy there. A really great guy." And she kept repeating how he was a good person. Whether it was from the cold air of January or the excitement of finding someone, her cheeks were flushed. What kind of person is he? Dylan asked, and to that Sharon proudly replied, He's part of a TV crew. His name is Christopher. He goes on location shoots and visits all sorts of places. I went on many trips with you too, right? So, we hit it off. Upon hearing this, Dylan frowned slightly. A TV crew, so he's in the entertainment industry, right? I don't have a very good impression of that. How should I put it? Didn't he look a bit frivolous? But you're the one who said, men who travel to different places and see various sceneries are trustworthy. He had black hair and didn't look frivolous at all. Well, I did say that, but... I calmed down Dylan, who didn't seem convinced, and told Sharon. Anyway, make sure you date him properly and take your time to find out what kind of person he is. It's late now. You have work tomorrow, right? I urged Sharon, who seemed quite drunk, to go to bed. After that, Sharon and Christopher officially started dating. Their relationship seemed to be going well, and Sharon introduced Christopher to me and Dylan. Christopher, being in the entertainment industry, initially seemed elusive. But after talking to him, he turned out to be very personable. So when they brought up marriage, I genuinely agreed. The best thing is to respect Sharon's choice. Thus, they continued their relationship smoothly and got married 2 years after meeting. Christopher, wearing an undoubtedly expensive suit, came to greet us formally. He held a bottle of high-end wine in his hand. I was genuinely happy for Sharon's marriage. Sharon's face, brimming with happiness, made it clear she was at the peak of her joy. Thinking back, that might have been the happiest time. Christopher, looking confident, addressed Dylan. I've brought some wine. Let me pour you a glass. Dylan, albeit awkwardly, accepted it. The meal continued in a good atmosphere for a while. It was when the bottom of the wine bottle Christopher brought started to show that the mood changed. You're in the entertainment industry, right? Frankly, I still can't trust you. Dylan's words made me freeze. The room suddenly became quiet, the atmosphere tense. I didn't want to ruin this happy moment. Hey, why are you saying such unpleasant things all of a sudden? I sharply said to Dylan. Sharon then spoke up. That's right. What are you talking about, Dad? That's just prejudice. It's terrible that you can't trust the person I chose. Dylan's frown did not ease even at Sharon's words. Christopher tried to maintain a smile, but he was undoubtedly upset. The evening ended with an awkward atmosphere. After Christopher left, a sober Dylan sincerely apologized to us. Indeed, Dylan's opinion was nothing but a prejudice. Sharon's smile had proved Christopher was a good match, which was evident. Gradually, seeing our daughter's happy smile, Dylan began to accept Christopher. They were supposed to have pledged eternal love at their wedding. They were supposed to be in love. Now, I regret not listening more to Dylan's concerns. As Sharon was approaching her 30s, she announced her pregnancy. Both Dylan and I were overjoyed. Dylan, like when he talks about tourist destinations, awaited the grandchild's birth with a childlike smile. And I too, got too excited for my age. You two are getting ahead of yourselves. Then, at Sharon's request, she and Christopher decided to move in with us. We thought it would be better for everyone to live here together. We were saying you guys would surely be happy living with your grandchild. That's true. You both have jobs, right? Leave the caregiving to Grandma and Grandpa. Don't worry. Their belongings had already been moved from the nearby apartment where they had been living. Everything was prepared for the whole family to live together. Tears welled up as I thought about my daughter's growth and the upcoming birth of my grandchild. As we had these conversations, Sharon's belly grew. Christopher was still busy with work. I understood his job, but I wondered if he couldn't be a bit more supportive of Sharon. As for Sharon, being on maternity leave, she spent most of her time at home. I asked about Christopher's work. Sharon, rubbing her belly, defended him. Christopher is busy. He's always on the go. But he calls every day to say good morning and good night. We're even thinking of names for the baby together. Hoping for a beautiful girl. Oh, we'd love to help pick a name too. Sharon smiled, savoring her happiness, as she listed a few name options. As the due date approached, Sharon decided to name the baby Tiana. The moment Tiana was born, her vibrant cry was indescribably precious. Sharon's relieved expression. Tears in Christopher's eyes. Dylan's beaming smile. And Tiana, trying her best to breathe. I was confident that our lives were solid and would continue to be so. However, the happy future I envisioned never came to be. At the height of my daughter's happiness, I was shocked to learn a disturbing truth from Dylan. He had confirmed some unbelievable behavior from Christopher. I didn't want to doubt him. He was supposed to be the perfect husband for my precious daughter. Despite my uneasy feelings, Dylan, with a serious expression, insisted. I saw it with my own eyes. I know it's hard to believe Christopher's suspicious behavior. Violet, you might not want to know, but it's true. That man is lying. To us and to Sharon. I had never seen Dylan so emotional in over 30 years together. From his unsettled state, I learned everything. Dylan's seriousness made me realize the gravity of the situation. But it was too much to accept all at once. Why would Christopher do such a thing? What about Sharon and Tiana? My heart pounded, wishing I hadn't heard this truth. I wanted it all to be a lie. Especially since Tiana had just been born. Since Dylan told me, a swelling rage grew inside me. I felt the greatest anger of my life. I didn't know what the right answer was, but it was for Sharon and for Tiana. Reluctantly, I decided to follow Dylan's plan. Then we quietly began our preparations, just the two of us. Meanwhile, Tiana continued to grow. A month after her birth, we decided to go out as a family. The attendees were me, Dylan, Sharon, Christopher, and Tiana, 5 in total. I heard Christopher had planned this outing, which was a great surprise. He had arranged everything, including the meal. Dylan and I carefully prepared for the day. Upon arrival, Sharon lovingly watched Tiana. After taking a family photo with Tiana at the center, I wished for these peaceful days to continue. I glanced at Christopher. He wasn't looking at Sharon or Tiana. Although smiling, Christopher's attitude and tone seemed detached, as if preoccupied with something else. Then Christopher suddenly said with a sly smile, I want to take this opportunity and discuss this with you. I had a DNA test taken because I thought she didn't look like me. and it turns out she's not my daughter. Christopher said so, pointing at my granddaughter Tiana, who was being held by Sharon. I made an eye contact with my husband Dylan while Christopher was unable to hide his smirk. Just as I thought. I was disappointed, but quickly anger overwhelmed me. The test results show that Tiana is not my child. His shout drew the attention of those around us. So you've been cheating on me behind my back? You bastard. Were you having an affair with one of the fathers who picks up their kids from daycare? I felt a deep sense of regret. I still wanted to believe in him. A woman like this can't be trusted at all. Divorce. I want a divorce. Sharon seemed unable to comprehend Christopher's sudden change. She just froze and couldn't move. Sensing something amiss, Tiana, held by Sharon, started crying. Tiana's cries echoed throughout the area. After a moment, Sharon, with a look of astonishment, confronted Christopher. What do you mean? Why would you say that all of a sudden I haven't cheated? Christopher answered with a smug look. You say you haven't cheated, but can you provide any concrete evidence right now? I can't provide that, but I really haven't. Ah, so you're making excuses. I have irrefutable evidence here. Saying this, Christopher showed us the DNA test results and a divorce application. The test results indicated that there was no proof of a parent-child relationship between Christopher and Tiana. Half of the divorce application was already filled out. He had prepared all this. Sharon, faced with this evidence, couldn't say anything, her face on the verge of tears. Her lips were tightly pressed, enduring the pain, and my heart ached for her. Who could have imagined she would be treated this way? The results show that she's not my child. A cheating woman made a child with some other man, and the DNA proves it. Sign the divorce papers quickly. If you resist, I'll take you to court and demand compensation. Then Christopher, who had retracted his smile, spoke in a low voice. Hey, I've got a good lawyer. You can't escape, so be prepared. It's incredible how far he could take this act. This was the man he turned out to be. I felt a rage towards him like never before for neglecting my daughter. Glancing at Dylan, I saw he was angry too. Now was the only chance. I exchanged glances with Dylan and then took out a photo we had prepared in advance. This photo was our trump card. Holding it with trembling, angry hands, I presented it in front of Christopher. If you're going to do that, we have something to present as well. Right, Dylan? Yes, indeed. Dylan pulled several photos from his jacket pocket. They were photos of Christopher's infidelity, obtained by hiring a private investigator. Each photo was decisive evidence, but we had prepared multiple. It's necessary to confront him thoroughly with irrefutable evidence. How come these are here? What's this? In each of the several photos, Christopher was clearly visible. There were pictures of him walking arm in arm with an unknown woman, entering a hotel with a woman, and kissing a woman on the street, among others. Since the day Dylan confirmed Christopher's suspicious behavior, we had been investigating his actions with a detective. The skill of a professional detective is astounding. So, you were regularly meeting another woman, planning to switch from Sharon to her? Who's the one cheating, I wonder? Dylan also started yelling as well. You bastard! Trampling on Sharon's feelings. Christopher's smile had vanished, replaced by an unmistakable panic. How did you find out? No, wait. This is fake. You made these composite photos to slander me, you liar. Sharon's the one cheating. His voice was low at first, as if reassuring himself, then became accusatory, threatening us. But my anger was beyond control. Dylan, as if echoing my fury, shouted. You're the one who is lying. Are you saying all these photos are fake? Perhaps feeling overwhelmed by Dylan, or realizing his excuses were futile, Christopher suddenly became quiet. Dylan, although sometimes seen as unapproachable, hardly ever raises his voice. I realized for the first time how intimidating he could be when he was truly angry. Dylan took a breath and began talking in a quiet manner. My discomfort wasn't mistaken. You might not have noticed, but I heard everything from the bathroom. Those overly suspicious conversations. Things like "I'll manage the separation smoothly" or "help me forge the DNA report." I didn't intend to listen, but such conversations are obviously strange. You've been deceiving and hurting our daughters all this time. Dylan had accidentally overheard Christopher's phone conversation while he was in the bathroom. Dylan had been close to the door without realizing Christopher was there. And then Dylan raised his voice again. We're going to do another DNA test. Science will prove it. The second test should yield the same results, right? You'll take responsibility for what you've said. Don't even think about running away. Christopher's legs wobbled, his nose running, reduced to a pitiable state. Tiana, tired from crying, had fallen asleep. Was he always such a pathetic man? I remembered his sharp, robust appearance when he first came to ask for our daughter's hand in marriage. That man was nowhere to be seen now. At that moment, something snapped inside me. Sharon must have felt the same. Her eyes brimming with tears, she looked at Christopher with a mix of disgust and pity. I rubbed Sharon's back. I wanted to believe in you, if only I could. I sighed heavily, but now that the truth was revealed, Christopher could only apologize. His pride gone, his apologies seemed too late. Then, as Christopher was profusely apologizing, Sharon approached him. With tears in her eyes, she lashed out at him angrily. Don't joke around. It's too late to apologize now. Get out of our sight. You're the worst. Christopher's apology was cut off by the sound of a sharp slap. It felt like a satisfying sound that dispelled the terrible atmosphere. After receiving a powerful slap from Sharon, Christopher collapsed to his knees. He tried to flee but seemed unable to move, his legs giving out. As you wish, we'll part ways. Goodbye forever. Christopher received the stares of everyone around. Urged by Sharon, Dylan and I left the scene. Sharon didn't look back, not even once. According to the detective's investigation, Christopher's affair partner was an ex-girlfriend. The reason they broke up was apparently because he was a part-timer with low income at the time. Back then, Christopher was juggling part-time night shifts at a grocery store and stocking shelves at a supermarket. Later, Christopher joined a TV crew, and during a street interview for a TV program, he happened to meet his ex-girlfriend again. It was a wide show hosted by a celebrity known for his sharp tongue. His ex-girlfriend seemed impressed with Christopher, who had made a place for himself in the entertainment business. By this time, Sharon was already pregnant. Both wanting to rekindle their relationship, the ex-girlfriend was quite cooperative with this plan. Such a hopeless situation, I thought. Now that I knew the whole truth, my anger was replaced more with disappointment. On the way home, none of us spoke a word. If even we, as parents, were deeply hurt, Sharon's emotional wounds must be immeasurable. In the heavy silence, Dylan broke the ice. Hey. You should just rest for now. I'll take care of all the tedious things like the compensation claim and other procedures with Violet. Sharon just nodded silently. I also spoke to Sharon. Your life is still ahead of you. For Tiana's sake, eat delicious food, get plenty of sleep, enjoy beautiful scenery, and just focus on resting. We'll always be here to support you. Sharon was still struggling to come to terms with her feelings. But with Tiana there, we had to move forward. Few months passed by, but Sharon tended to stay at home. Given what had happened, it was understandable. Yet gradually, she regained her smile and declared, If I keep mourning, Tiana's going to get mad at me. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for worrying you so much. I'm thinking of returning to work soon. As for the compensation, Christopher and his party ended up paying $15,000 each. It was a deserved retribution. And Christopher was dramatically dumped by his ex-girlfriend. She was furious about the large sum of money lost because of him. That's a fitting end for such a man. Dylan said with a face that couldn't hide his disgust. About half a year later, in a season of blue skies, Sharon successfully returned to work. Worried, I secretly visited her workplace. My concerns were unnecessary, as I saw Sharon lively and happily working surrounded by children. I told this to Dylan, and to that he proudly snorted. I told you there was no need to worry. Though he had hesitated to come with me till the last minute. Hearing Dylan's words, I couldn't help but laugh, feeling our happy daily life returning. Despite everything, our family had regained peaceful days. Tiana was growing up healthy. Dylan, now past 60, was still actively working. Today, I'm preparing a meal for a family dinner. After setting the table, I said to everyone, "Let's go on a family trip again. Anywhere, as long as we're together." "Absolutely. Anywhere we go will be fun." At that moment, Tiana made a sound as if replying. Her incomprehensible babble was enough to bring a smile to Sharon's face. We all smiled in response. "Dad and Mom, live long, okay? I want to show Tiana the wide world. Just like the old times, I hope we can travel together again. Of course, I plan to live long." "Right, Dylan?" "Yes, indeed. Maybe it's time to cut back on the alcohol." Dylan went to put the beer he had prepared back in the fridge. I too thought about starting walking myself to stay healthy. With these 4 people, I felt like we could do anything. I want to continue spending my days in this house, unchanged. Because I know there is certain happiness here. But Catherine has her own room. It's been 6 months since I started living with Catherine, my step-granddaughter. I often saw Catherine doing her homework in the bathroom. Feeling a distance between us, our daily conversations were scarce, and I spent many days troubled. Even asking daughter-in-law Ava, I was curtly told it's because the bathroom helps her concentrate, leaving me puzzled. With my son, Taylor, and the others frequently abroad for work, they were hardly ever home. It's practically just Catherine and me living together. Wanting to get closer to Catherine, I started off with safe conversations. "Is school fun?" "It's okay." "Which class do you like best?" "They're all the same." Her monotone responses left me at a loss for what to ask next. It was unusual for conversation to falter to this extent, even considering her shy nature. Just as I began to feel anxious about our lack of closeness, Taylor and the others were away on what seemed like their umpteenth business trip of the year. It was as if she was waiting for us to be alone. Catherine looked me in the eyes, almost pleadingly, and began to speak. "Grandma, can I talk to you for a sec?" "What's wrong?" "Actually." Catherine, suggesting it's faster to show than tell, took my hand and led me to Ava's room. Upon entering, she opened one of the many piled-up cardboard boxes to show me something. This winter was feeling particularly cold. On my way home from shopping, carrying bags, I walked slowly, shivering from the cold. Perhaps it's because it's nearly Christmas, but the streets are busier and filled with smiling faces. I feel lonely. This year, at 64, I, Harper, recently lost my beloved husband Martin in an accident, feeling an overwhelming loneliness. Until last year, I enjoyed Christmas with Martin, laughing like everyone passing by, but now I'm alone. Even though I didn't buy much, the bags felt unusually heavy, and I hurried home. "I'm home. Oh yeah, I forgot. There's no one here." My words disappeared into the air. Mechanically, I stored the groceries I had bought. Suddenly, I realized that I hadn't cooked much since Martin's passing. "Maybe I'll make beef stew today." Muttering to myself, the house phone rang. I rushed to pick it up. "Hello?" "Hey, it's Taylor." The caller was my only son, Taylor. "Your dad's funeral is over." Of course, I had informed Taylor about Martin's passing, but he had said he couldn't make it due to work. "I was going to come home, but the weather turned bad, and my flight got canceled." Sensing an excuse, I intuitively felt Taylor had something to consult. "So, what's up today? Can I come back home?" The idea of Taylor returning home after becoming an adult surprised me a bit. Feeling more secure with my son than living alone, I was about to express my consent when Taylor surprised me further. Actually, I got married while on a business trip. What? Taking a deep breath, Taylor quickly spilled the beans. The thing is, she has a kid. Still in elementary school and needs constant attention, but since my wife is busy with work and often abroad, I was wondering if you could help us out. I've always loved children, so despite the surprise, the news of having a granddaughter made me genuinely happy. My wife's name is Ava, and the child is Catherine. Ava's in sales, always bustling about abroad. To me, a housewife, a woman in sales and traveling the world seemed quite impressive. What's Catherine like? She's in the 2nd grade, very serious and a good kid. So, when will you move in? Really? You're okay with it? Taylor sounded surprised, as if my approval was unexpected. Of course. I'd be happy if it becomes livelier. Thanks, that really helps. Though Taylor hastily hung up, I felt relieved knowing I wouldn't have to feel lonely from next month. As I busied myself with cleaning the house and buying what was needed, time flew by, and before I knew it, the day Taylor and his family were supposed to return was upon us. I tried calling Taylor to ask various things about preparing a room for my granddaughter, but couldn't reach him. Since that call from Taylor, there had been no contact at all. Despite feeling anxious, the day they were said to arrive finally came. Not knowing what time they would come back, I felt restless all day. Just as I had finished tidying up every corner of the house, the doorbell rang. At the door, Taylor and his family were lined up. Welcome. As I opened the door, I locked eyes with Taylor, who awkwardly scratched his cheek. I was worried because you wouldn't answer my calls, no matter how many times I tried. Sorry, I've been busy. From now on, since we'll be living together, it's important to keep in touch even if you're busy. Got it. With that, Taylor turned towards the beautiful woman and the quiet child standing next to him. Let me introduce them. This is my wife Ava and my daughter Catherine. Nice to meet both of you. I've been looking forward to living together. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having us. Ava, stunning enough to catch even a woman's eye, spoke with a voice as clear as a news reporter. Nice to meet you, Harper. I look forward to getting to know you. Ava seemed lively, a contrast to Catherine, who was quiet. However, she greeted me properly, a serious child just as Taylor had described. Just call me Grandma. After showing them their rooms, a moving truck arrived shortly after. As the movers unloaded box after box, most were taken into Ava's room. I offered to help with the overwhelming amount of boxes, but was declined because they felt bad for moving in without contacting me. I decided it was best not to intrude too much on their privacy. After all the boxes were moved, the movers left. Taylor, now a bit settled, spoke solemnly to a photo of his father. It all happened so suddenly. Dad. I heard a truck ran a red light and was about to hit a child. He died trying to save the kid. Sounds like Dad. Yes, and the child was saved. The parents were very grateful. As a father, I need to take good care of Catherine too. Despite his busy work, Taylor seemed concerned about not spending enough time with Catherine. While we were talking, Catherine, who had finished unpacking, stood quietly in a corner of the living room. Taylor then left to finish unpacking. Catherine, are you hungry? No, I'm fine. Catherine's mature response made me think she was shy. How about having some tea with me, Catherine? Thank you. It might take some time to get closer to Catherine. As I prepared the tea, I tried to find a way to bond. What do you like, Catherine? Nothing in particular. Any food you like, anything at all? Nothing. I was taken aback by Catherine's reluctance to engage in a conversation. Just as I was struggling to find a topic, Taylor, who seemed to have finished unpacking quickly, returned to the living room. Since I'm always abroad, I don't have much stuff, so it was quick. Laughing, Taylor's words made me imagine how busy his life must have been. Good work. I'm about to start dinner, but does anyone have any dietary restrictions? We can eat anything. At Taylor's words, Catherine also silently nodded. Understood. I decided to make beef stew for dinner. And as it simmered, Ava walked into the living room. It smells wonderful. Thank you. I just finished making beef stew. I've been traveling so much, I'm really happy to have a homemade meal for a change. It must be tough for you, Ava. Yes, the company is on the verge of bankruptcy due to a failed business venture. The salary is low, so I'm traveling to various places for work. Hearing about the difficult situation Ava was in, my heart ached, and I decided to support her as much as I could. Ava, feel free to rely on me anytime. Ava nodded with a smile, saying yes. And so, our life together with Taylor and his family began. However, Ava and Taylor were away from home more than I expected, and I couldn't help but think Catherine must feel quite lonely in this situation. Though there's no blood relation, I sympathize with Catherine's situation. And have to take care of her while being careful not to overstep. After 6 months of cautiously navigating our relationship, I noticed Catherine often studying in the bathroom. But Catherine has her own room. Today, as she came out of the bathroom with her study materials, I immediately asked her, Catherine, why do you study in the bathroom? Isn't your room more spacious? But she didn't answer, just hung her head in silence. You can tell me anything, you know? I said gently, looking into her eyes, but Catherine just clenched her mouth shut and shook her head. Let me know when you're ready to talk. Eventually, she didn't say anything and quickly went back to her room. I should ask Ava when she comes back today. Since we started living together, Taylor has been good about keeping in touch. I received a message that Taylor would be back next week, and Ava was returning today. As the message said, Ava came home that evening. I'm home. Welcome back. Ava entered the house, carrying a large suitcase. This time, work went well. She seemed in a good mood, singing a trendy song while unpacking. I admired how capable she seemed as I waited for her to settle down. While I was in the kitchen, Ava came to get a drink, and I immediately asked her about Catherine. Ava, I've noticed Catherine often studies in the bathroom. Do you know why? I asked Catherine about it before, and it seems like she can concentrate better in the bathroom. Is that so? Maybe she likes small spaces. The bathroom is the quietest place, where it's hard to hear outside noises. So, don't worry about it. Indeed, the bathroom is quiet and kept clean, which might make it an easy place to concentrate. Though I was skeptical, I decided not to pry further. The next night, Ava said she was going on another business trip and left the house. Both of them are hardly ever home. It's practically just Catherine and me living together. Wanting to get closer to Catherine, I started off with safe conversations. Is school fun? It's okay. Which class do you like best? They're all the same. Her monotone answers left me at a loss for what to ask next. It was unusual for conversation to not flow, even considering her shy nature. Thinking it might be best to avoid school topics, I changed my approach. What do you do on your days off? Homework. Catherine's expression remained dark, her tone stiff. Feeling like pressing further might make her dislike me, I dropped my shoulders. You're working hard, that's admirable. I'll get dinner ready, so take it easy. At my words, she seemed a bit relieved, nodded, and went back to her room. What to do? As I headed towards the shower, pondering, I glanced at the bathroom and noticed the door was locked. Was she holding it in? If that was the case, Catherine's aloof behavior made sense. I decided to try talking to her again when the timing felt right. From the next day, I started speaking to her more, observing her mood, and even took her shopping with me on weekends. Today they have a special on meat. How about pork sauté for lunch? Yes. Do you like pork sauté, Catherine? Yes. Catherine's demeanor was unchanged, but I was beginning to read her expressions a bit more. She had tensed up a bit when I mentioned pork sauté. But I also want to eat hamburger. Maybe we should do hamburger instead. Yes. This time, it seemed I had guessed right, and Catherine nodded with a lively voice. Then, one day, as I felt we were gradually getting closer through these subtle exchanges, we received a phone call at home. Hello? This is Walker, Catherine's homeroom teacher. Are you a family member of Catherine? Yes. I'm Catherine's grandmother. It was my first time receiving a call from the elementary school, so I was anxious. Catherine has developed a high fever and has been unwell, and unfortunately, our school nurse is not available. What? I'll come to the school right away. Interrupting the teacher, I hurriedly got ready and rushed out of the house. Upon arriving at the school and being led to the nurse's office, I rushed to Catherine's side. Catherine? It's Grandma. Do you recognize me? My granddaughter looked at me with moist eyes, breathing heavily in discomfort. Grandma. You don't have to force yourself. I'm here so you can relax. I wiped Catherine's sweat with the towel I had brought. You're sweating a lot. Do you think you can drink some water? After inserting a straw into a bottle of sports drink, I watched her condition. Grandma. I'm thirsty. Catherine, who usually speaks formally, was talking like a normal child, clearly feeling under the weather. Even though she spoke in fits and starts, I firmly thought to myself that I would definitely help her. I supported Catherine's head as she tried to sit up slightly and held the straw to her lips. After taking small sips of the sports drink, Catherine managed to drink half the bottle and then lay back down on the bed. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Catherine. It's natural to take care of you when you're suffering like this. I stroked her head and smiled gently. After a while of looking uncomfortable, Catherine gradually stabilized as I continued to care for her earnestly. Just then, the homeroom teacher, Mr. Walker, came to check on us, so I asked him to arrange a taxi. Soon after receiving word that the taxi had arrived, I supported Catherine carefully as we made our way home. Catherine, are you okay? I kept speaking to her, matching her pace as we slowly entered the house. Her room was on the second floor. Considering the difficulty of climbing stairs, I decided to let her rest on a sofa on the first floor, covered with a blanket. I continued to take care of Catherine tirelessly, making oatmeal, wiping her face with a wet towel. Grandma, thank you. It's all right. I'm always here with you, so rest easy. When the fever began to subside, Taylor came home. Catherine, are you okay? Welcome back. She's settled down and sleeping now. I'm relieved. I came back as soon as I got the message from you, but it looks like I left everything to you at a tough time. It's okay. This is exactly why I'm here for. Taylor, looking relieved, spread out the cold medicine and sports drink he had bought for Catherine on the table. By the way, where's Ava? That's the thing. I haven't heard from her. It seems she's far away this time. Maybe there's bad reception. She's on a business trip again? Sounds like she has it tougher than me. I'm worried about Ava, too. I had some suspicions about Ava's absence and how I couldn't get hold of her. Though it bothered me, Catherine was my priority. A few days later, when Ava suddenly returned home, Catherine's health had fully recovered. Unlike the deepening bond between Catherine and me, Ava showed no signs of concern for Catherine. Ava, I want to talk to you about Catherine. I'm sorry. I was suddenly called into work. Can we talk another time? I'm worried about Catherine. While you were away, she studied in the bathroom through hot and cold days. That's not normal. She just finds the bathroom comfortable. Please don't worry about it. Without air conditioning or heating, she's cooped up in there. She must not mind it if she can concentrate on her studies. I have to go now. What she blurted out was a remark I couldn't believe coming from a parent, and I felt a chill down my spine. Ava slipped past me, who was stunned, and left the house. A few days later, with Taylor and Ava gone on yet another overseas business trip, it was just Catherine and me. "Grandma, can I talk to you?" It was as if she was waiting for us to be alone. Catherine looked me in the eyes, almost pleadingly, and began to speak. "What's wrong?" "It's better if I show you," she said, pulling me by the hand towards Ava's room. Entering the room, she opened one of the many piled-up cardboard boxes and showed me something. "What's this?" "I know, Mom is having an affair." "What?" "These are souvenirs Mom bought to cover up her affair with her lover on their trips." I was shocked by her words. But the surprises didn't stop there. Catherine moved towards Ava's laptop, turned it on, waited for it to boot up, and clicked on a certain file, which brought up a password prompt. "I really don't want to see this, but..." Inside the file were numerous photos of Ava, always with a man by her side. "So many!" The man next to her changed in various photos, many of which showed souvenirs like the ones she had shown me. "This is in Hot Springs, and this one's in Hawaii." The dates on the photos corresponded with the days Ava said she was on business trips. "I needed to do some research once and borrowed Mom's laptop." Catherine, being in elementary, didn't have a mobile phone yet. So when she needed to look up something, she always said she was using Mom's laptop. "I saved my data in a file, but accidentally saved it in the wrong one." Scrolling through the photos, Catherine explained. "When I was searching for my data, this was the only file that was locked." She continued in a somber tone, staring at Ava's smiling face in the photos. "Curious, I tried entering Mom's birthday as the password, and it opened." After closing the file and shutting down the laptop, she took a deep breath. "When I confronted Mom about the affair, she threatened me, saying if Dad and Grandma found out, I'd be thrown out too." What a thing to say to a child! Anger welled up inside me towards Ava. "She said if I pretended not to see the affair, I wouldn't be thrown out, and she'd get me souvenirs to keep quiet." To think she'd try to bribe you with gifts bought to camouflage her affair, unbelievable. "Some were forcibly placed in my room. Seeing them constantly reminded me that Mom was cheating, and I couldn't stand it." As she spoke, tears streamed down Catherine's face. "That's why I didn't want to be in my room and ended up studying in the bathroom instead." "You didn't want to study there, did you?" "It was so hard. I've wanted to tell you and Dad for so long, but Mom strictly warned me not to say anything." Reflecting on it, I realized I rarely saw Ava and Catherine having a good conversation. Seeing Mom made me afraid of adults and unable to trust anyone. "I see. But recently, I felt like I could talk to you." Indeed, since that day, I felt she had started to open up to me. Catherine, looking down, strained her voice out. "I'm sorry for keeping silent. A granddaughter who keeps secrets doesn't deserve to be here. Please, kick me out along with Mom." "There's no way I'd do that." Anger reaching its peak, I made Catherine put her head back up and immediately messaged Taylor. The phone rang shortly after. "Mom, is what you messaged true?" His voice was hurried, conveying his panic. "Yes, Catherine told me, and I saw it myself." "This is an emergency. I'll talk to the company and come back home immediately." Hearing our conversation, Catherine looked anxious. "Don't worry. I will protect you no matter what." "Thank you." Taylor really did come back quickly. Upon his return and after seeing the evidence of Ava's affair, Taylor was furious. It was understandable. "We'll confront Ava as soon as she gets back." I had never seen Taylor this angry before. I nodded at Taylor's words, waiting for Ava to return. A few days later, that day arrived. "Ava, we need to talk." As soon as Ava got home, Taylor opened his mouth. "What is it all of a sudden? I'm tired from just getting back." "Have you been cheating? What are you talking about?" Ava's obviously irritated demeanor made it clear she was playing dumb. Those souvenirs, they're matching ones you got with a man, right? They're matching ones with Catherine. I saw photos of a man holding those souvenirs. What? Did you go through my computer without permission? Ava was desperate to deflect from the truth that was becoming impossible to hide. You locked the files because you didn't want them seen, right? So it was Catherine who told you. How dare she? Ava exploded in anger and lunged at Catherine, but Taylor restrained her just in time. Was Ava always like this? It was as if she was a different person. Let me go! How dare you spill the beans? Taylor held her firmly, restricting her movements, as she spat out insults. You're complicit in this, you'll be thrown out too. Catherine did nothing wrong. I stepped forward to protect my granddaughter. I called your company, and the on the verge of bankruptcy story was a lie, wasn't it? I did nothing wrong. Stop accusing me. Ava stubbornly refused to admit her wrongdoing, but her limits were clear. Your boss said your salary was reduced because you caused problems with men within the company. We'll be seeking compensation from you as well as the men involved in the divorce settlement. Finally, Ava stopped resisting and slumped down. Silence fell over the room. I feel sick because of you all. I'm going to the doctor's later. After exchanging a look with me, Taylor let Ava go. She left the room as if she was drained of all energy. Ava indeed went to see the doctor. Apparently, she had contracted a troublesome disease overseas and needed to focus on treatment. She's paying for her reckless lifestyle. I'll have to inform Ava's company, Taylor said after receiving a call from the hospital and relayed the information to Ava's company. Ava's reputation worsened, and after the disease came to light, she had trouble with the men she had been involved with and ended up resigning. It looks like we can finally settle down. Thank you, Dad. It's what family does. Taylor said so, with his words heavy with resolve. After the turmoil subsided and we started to regain our normal life, Taylor received a call. He frowned immediately and answered. Don't joke with me. We're done. It's your problem now. He hung up abruptly. We might need to change our phone number, he muttered. What happened? It was Ava. She said she's broke because of the compensation and asked for help. How selfish. Exactly. She's getting what she deserves from the men she was involved with. It looks like Ava tried to work in the entertainment district, making use of her beauty. But her illness made it difficult to find work, leading to a life of poverty. Catherine suffered so much, it's only right Ava faces the consequences. Catherine was remarkable for enduring it all alone. As I reflected, Taylor spoke with determined eyes. I'll do everything so Catherine never has to suffer again. It seemed the ordeal made Taylor want to rebuild his relationship with Catherine, leading him to request a transfer to a domestic role. Spending more time at home, he grew closer to Catherine, strengthening their bond. Lately, Catherine's smiles had become more frequent. Catherine, is there somewhere you'd like to go? The aquarium. Then let's go today, all three of us. Taylor's off too. Yay! I love you, Grandma. Jumping up and down, she smiled happily. Catherine's joyful laugh warmed my heart. I love you too, Catherine. Holding Catherine's hand as we set off, I promised myself to protect this smile forever. You always look beautiful. Today, too. You're nothing like my wife. I wish I could marry you soon. It was in the middle of the night when I woke up to go to the bathroom. I heard a surprising conversation from the living room. I'd also prefer a beautiful mom. I'd be happy that it could happen. Apparently, my husband and son were on a video call with someone. From the conversation, it seemed likely that it was my husband's mistress, and shockingly, my son was also talking with the woman. What in the world is going on? After all the times they've ignored me, to do something like this. For the past month, I've been treated as if I didn't exist by the two of them. Ignored completely, even when I spoke right in front of them, and on top of that, the meals I cooked were thrown in the trash. I felt my heart turning cold. And so, I vowed to get my revenge. My name is Lucy, a 39-year-old housewife. My husband Albert is a 45-year-old office worker, and our son Frederick is a 14-year-old middle school student. Our family was just an ordinary, average one, living happily together. Albert had an average income for his age and a normal look. But he was a very kind man. Our son, in the 8th grade, was in his rebellious phase, not listening to me, but I still adored him as my sweet boy. I worked hard as a housewife, doing everything all I could to support our family. However, our peaceful happiness shattered suddenly one day. It all started a month ago. Frederick, dinner's ready. One evening, I called out to my son, but he completely ignored me. Well, it's just a teenage behavior, I thought. At that time, I didn't care much. I'll leave them there in plastic wrap. I just said that and left it alone. But I noticed something was off when my husband came home. Welcome back. Dinner's ready. I called out my husband, but he also ignored me. Then, my son came out of his room, running up to my husband. Dad, welcome back. Did you buy dinner? Yeah, your favorite burgers. Awesome. Meat's the best, right? Then, my husband and son threw the dinner I made, with the plates, into the trash. What the heck? What are you doing? Ignoring me completely, they began eating the burgers from the grocery store which they had spread on the table. Why have you been ignoring me all this time? I asked for a reason, but both my husband and son just silently ate their burgers, as if they couldn't hear me. I felt like I had become invisible. After finishing, they returned to their rooms, leaving the mess behind. Crying, I picked up the plates from the trash can. I ended up throwing away the burger trashes they left behind. Since that day, for a whole month, I was treated as if I was non-existent. No matter what I said or did, it was as if I was invisible to them. From about a week later, I gave up and started making meals just for myself. My parents are farmers and they send fresh, delicious vegetables to the house. I used these vegetables to make meals, thinking of my family's health, but it was unbearable to see them thrown away uneaten every day. Eventually, even the meals I made for myself got thrown away by them when I wasn't looking. There was even a time when they deliberately crushed the fresh vegetables which my parents sent right in front of me. This is kind of a stress reliever, huh? Why are you doing this? Did I do something wrong? Tell me and I'll fix it. They continued to stomp on the vegetables, laughing mockingly, as if they couldn't see me no matter how much I cried and screamed. Then, my husband did something unbelievable. This one too, no need for it anymore, I'll throw it away. It wouldn't fetch much even if I sold it. He took off his wedding ring from his left ring finger and threw it into the trash can. It was supposed to be the symbol of our precious bond. That was the last straw for me, and I shut my heart down. I couldn't believe he would go as far as to throw away our wedding ring. What is he thinking? My sadness and anger finally reached the limit. I secluded myself in my room. From behind my room's door, I could hear my husband and son laughing together, which only deepened my sorrow. Why did things turn out this way? What happened to them? Confused and distressed, I spent a month crying alone in my room. One late night, while walking to the bathroom, I overheard a joyful conversation of my husband and my son from the living room. I felt lonely, knowing I was no longer part of their world. But then, they started a video call with someone, and the conversation that ensued was unbelievable. Sophie, you look beautiful today, too. You're nothing like my wife. I wish I could marry you soon. Ditch that wrinkled and spotted woman fast, and marry Sophie. I'd be so happy to have such a beautiful mom. I couldn't hear the other person's voice, but my husband and son were praising someone over the phone. Mother? What are they talking about? It was unbelievable. From their conversation, it was clear my husband was having an affair, and my son knew and was encouraging it. Their terrible conversation continued. Lucy really is a foolish woman, isn't she? Now that she's shut herself in her room, we don't have to see her wrinkled, spotted face, which is such a relief. Haha, it's hilarious. She really seems to know we can't see her. They were mocking me. I felt my heart was freezing. I knew my husband was working hard but was being passed over for promotion at work. I believed my son was just being rebellious because of his age. That's why I had been patient until now. But this was too much. What was my endurance for? Knowing the truth ignited the anger that had been smoldering inside me. I couldn't forgive this, not even because they were family. At that moment, I decided to take revenge. For the next 2 months, I researched my husband's mistress, waiting for the right moment for revenge. Then, one day, my husband approached me. Hey, I need to talk to you. Oh, it's been a while since you came to talk to me. Are you done ignoring me? Yeah, you're of no use to me anymore. My husband handed me divorce papers with a nasty smile. And my son was grinning beside him. I've found someone else. Leave this house. I took the divorce papers from the table with no expression. Fine, I answered. They were surprised, as if they didn't expect my agreement. Huh? You know things very well. We could have divorced sooner then? I had a feeling it would come to this. I already packed. I'll leave tomorrow morning. Oh, okay. Anything else you want to say? What do you want me to say? Beg you not to throw me away? No, just sign the divorce papers. My husband seemed a bit let down, but I didn't care and signed the papers, returning them to him. They probably didn't expect that things wouldn't go so smoothly. They looked at each other, but then laughed, as if it was fine as long as I agreed to the divorce. I wonder how long their smug smiles will last. They had no idea that hell was waiting for them after this. The only one who knew it at this point was me. I was laughing inside myself. The next day, I packed my bags and decided to go back to my parents' house. Then, thank you for everything up to now. You really don't regret it? I can reconsider if you want. Why? You're the one who wanted a divorce, right? Did you think I'd be crying and begging you to stay? What did you say? Dad, it's fine. We won't be troubled without a woman like her. That's true. She's a woman who no longer matters to us. My husband seemed to have mixed feelings about me agreeing so easily to the divorce. But that was no longer of my business. The husband I loved had already changed. The husband I knew before would never have treated me like I didn't exist or laughed in such an unpleasant way. I felt the last 15 years of our marriage were in vain. Goodbye. Please take care. What happens to them after this has nothing to do with me. After all, my husband himself said that I no longer mattered to them. Upon my return to my parents' home, they welcomed me warmly. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. The vegetables you sent were either thrown away or trampled on by my husband and son, and they all went to waste. I truly felt sorry for not being able to appreciate my parents' kindness. Wasting food brings punishment. I've seen plenty of people like them suffering. My father was concerned about the scars of my heart. Feeling the warmth of my parents after a long time, I couldn't stop my tears. Meanwhile, the hell for my ex-husband and son was just beginning. Within a week of our divorce and returning to my parents' house, my ex-husband and son came rushing to our doorstep. The moment they saw my face as I opened the door, they started making a scene. Lucy, help us! We were deceived! That's what I told you, Dad. It was suspicious. No, you never said that. You were happy about getting a beautiful mother instead of Lucy. Hearing their ugly quarrel, I managed to keep from laughing and responded calmly. What? You just realized? Shouldn't it have been obvious? you're really foolish. You knew about it? Of course. Sophie, right? There's no way a woman that beautiful would be interested in a man like you. My ex-husband gasped in surprise. Sophie was my husband's mistress. He was quite shocked that I knew what Sophie looked like. Actually, after hearing their conversation in the living room, I sneaked out of my room while they were sleeping and checked my ex-husband's phone, which was charging in the living room. The phone was locked, probably as a precaution, but I knew he used his birthday as the password, so it was easy to open. I was astounded by his lack of security awareness and how he underestimated me, thinking I wouldn't know his birthday. Well, anyways, I opened his text messages and found a lot of exchanges between him and Sophie, like a couple in love. Just thinking about it now makes me nauseous. But Sophie's profile picture was too beautiful to be true. She has exotic features on her face, so beautiful that she could be an idol or a celebrity. No, it was definitely suspicious. There was no reason for such a beautiful woman to be attracted to an average man like him. So, I did an image search with Sophie's photo. Nowadays, you can search the internet using photos, not just keywords. That's when a shocking truth came to light. That Sophie, she's actually a middle-aged man, just like you. There was a warning posted on the internet about a marriage scam artist. Just to be sure, I asked a police officer friend from my school days, and it turned out to be true. Even a famous manga artist got caught in this kind of scam and lost $750,000. No way! I did a video call with her. It was definitely that beautiful woman. My husband was desperately trying to deny it, seemingly unwilling to believe. My son, too, was dumbfounded, thinking it couldn't be a scam. But suddenly, we couldn't get in touch anymore just as we were about to get married. She ran off with our money. Oh, you donated quite a lot, didn't you? I believed that beautiful woman was going to be my mom. We even talked through video calls. But nowadays, you know, even in video calls, with software, a man can pretend to be a woman. Did you know? These days, gender transformation tools can change one's gender and appearance in calls, making them look like a completely different person. The voice can be easily altered from male to female, and the facial expressions change during the conversation, so it's hard to tell it's fake. It's truly a terrifying era. No way! My Sophie is a middle-aged man? When I saw Sophie's real face on the internet, I laughed so hard at the difference. Horrible, Mom! You knew and still abandoned us? I lost my savings too. Horrible? Have you already forgotten what you have done to me? Listening to them act as if they were the victims, all I could do was shaking my head. Ignoring me as if I didn't exist, not responding when I spoke to you, throwing away the meals I made. At the end, you chose to divorce. You were the ones who went away first. Never call me Mom again. What? You're still mad? I'm sorry, let's make up. We're family, right? We're strangers now. So I don't care. This is the end you chose. Take responsibility for your own choices. When I rejected them, my son begged even more. Don't say that. I'm your son, right? Help me, at least. What? That's not fair, Frederick. Trying to save yourself? It's Dad's fault for being tricked in the first place. There's a good investment, we'll share the profits, how could you not suspect that? You were happy to become rich and handed over all your savings too. I was tired of hearing their endless and unpleasant bickering. Our family was destroyed by a single scam artist. If my ex-husband hadn't cheated, maybe we would still be a happy family now. But it's too late. It's a waste of time. Can you leave? As I tried to close the front door, my ex-husband begged me. Wait! Please, let's start over. Your parents are farmers, right? So even if we have no money, we won't starve. Are you saying you want to reconcile with me for food? No, it's not like that. I need you. I know it too late, but forgive me. I won't do it again. His obvious excuses only made me sigh. Such men will surely repeat the same mistakes. I decided to put an end to it. Wasting food brings punishment. I've seen many like you suffering. What are you talking about all of a sudden? It's my parents' teaching. You threw away the vegetables they lovingly grew without even eating them. Understand? I'm angry. I will never forgive you. Don't ever show your face to me again. With that, I closed the door. Wait! Mom, forgive me! They kept making a scene at the front door, causing a neighborhood disturbance, so I called the police to take them away. Later, I heard that my ex-husband lost all his money and was fired for embezzling company funds. My son dropped out of high school and is working, but he can't find a good job. The marriage scam artist was recently arrested, according to the news. He was a middle-aged man, nothing like the beautiful woman, and many men were deceived on social media. As for me, I'm helping out on my parents' farm, living a stress-free and healthy life. I'm soon going to be introduced to a man of my age who's also a farmer in the same area. Next time, I want to build a happy family.